Anti-culture wars are an astonishing example of confirmation bias. That's where everything and absolutely anything confirms a bias that you actually want to hold, I think, regardless of the evidence. Now, last Sunday, a fan, and you'll see him in the distance in the video I'll show you, yelled something just as a black player for the Miami Marlins came up to bat. Now, the commentator calling the game was shocked by what he thought he heard, the N-word.
We just apologize, heard some horrible language that doesn't belong anywhere on our broadcasts as far as I'm concerned.
Instant panic, racism in baseball. Now, the Colorado Rockies, whose home game this was, said it would investigate what was reported as a racial slur. And that claim went all around America and in Britain and also here in Australia. My own Herald Sun newspaper ran wire copy about this racist abuse. News.com.au reported this repulsive abuse that had disgusted the United States. The West Australian reported it too, as did other outlets, except it turned out to be a complete misunderstanding. The commentator who'd heard the shout had simply misheard it. Fans at the game said that the fan, who wasn't even looking at the players, I don't know whether you saw him in the background calling out like this, he wasn't shouting the N-word, but shouting Dinger. Dinger is the club mascot, a dinosaur, and the fan wanted him to come say hello to his grandkids next to him. Joining me on Culture Wars is Rowan Dean, columnist, author, champion petanque player and host of Outsiders on Sky News on Sundays at 9 a.m. Rowan Dean, what does this story that went around the world tell us?
Well, it tells us an awful lot, and most of it is pretty disturbing, actually, Andrew. It is amusing. Yes, it's an amusing story for sure because of how it turned out. But what it tells us first and foremost is you've long complained, I've long complained, and others have long complained that in this modern culture of critical race theory, people are being taught to see racism wherever it is, wherever it may be in their minds, and to see it even where it is not. And now we have them hearing racism where it is not. And this is this dangerous kind of obsession, focusing on everything must be racist. And a couple of lessons come out of this. Just imagine for 1 second, Andrew, had this bloke been identified on social media before the story came out about what he'd actually said. The guy's life would be in danger, make no mistake about it. In fact, he could have been injured, or anything could have happened to him before the full story came out. And in fact, the full story probably wouldn't have come out as rapidly. You remember the boy with the red MAGA hat standing in front of the guy banging the thing. Exactly. Very similar. You know, the world told this story of how racist and privileged this character was. Several months later, huge defamation payouts. But this guy could have been injured. Anything could have happened to him. The second really disturbing thing about this, Andrew, is how the news went around the world. You said even the West Australian, your own paper, other papers gleefully, well, not necessarily gleefully, but certainly reported the story and said, so long before the guy had a chance to explain or anybody investigated, the story was out there. And most people will have seen and read the story, who have seen and read the story, probably won't ever see the true side of things. So there's that this will stick as an example. But the most disturbing thing, I guess, about it, Andrew, is the way that we have focused on, for example, a word, which turns out to just be a vocal exclamation without context. And this is the classic example where context is everything. And the coincidence, which is what led to this misunderstanding of a black player being there at the same time the guy's yelling out Dinger, this coincidence goes to the very heart of where we so often make mistakes and misjudge people, because two things are seen out of context and a conclusion is reached. And I think that's a really good lesson, that context is everything.
Oh, but Rowan, you say that. I think you probably said exactly the same. You remember the case of that NASCAR driver that went into his garage and someone had looped, I think it was a light switch or something, garage, whatever, looped it, and he said, "It's a noose." And that story went around the world as well. Racist noose for a black car driver, and all the car drivers went around him, and, you know, hugs and kisses and photo ops. Turned out it was a complete, just a workman doing it. I mean, it's weird. People don't. It's almost like they welcome it. I mean, the very foundation of this story, one fan in one game in America yells out, even if you thought it was the N-word, and suddenly the whole league has got a crisis.
And also, Andrew, just think about the likelihood. Do you seriously believe some character at a football game is going to yell out the N-word? I mean, it's just laughable. And yet people want to believe it, and that's the scary,
you know.
Yeah, people wanted to believe it. That's the scary part.
Hey, Greta Thunberg, talking about confirmation bias, this would have made me think, I guess, of the global warming extremist appearing on the cover of Sweden's Vogue, a magazine devoted to conspicuous consumption, makes her a global warming hypocrite, Rowan. But she's in fact used the publicity to smash the fashion industry, saying it's a huge contributor to the climate and ecological emergency, not to mention its impact on countless workers and communities being exploited around the world in order for some to enjoy fast fashion that many treat as disposables. Rowan, I'm inclined to give her points there for staying true, even when she's being flattered by being on a glossy mag.
Well, it's almost like she must have a terrific sense of humour, because my admiration is actually increasing for Greta Thunberg. Only recently she told the American Senate, I think it was, that in fact she was just really exaggerating when she told people to panic about global warming, because, you know, why not? She was speaking to a crowd. Now she's come out and attacking the very people who are lauding her. She did that at the World Economic Forum as well. So she told them, you know, you're the baddies. And now she's telling Vogue, you're the baddies, you're doing a bad job. At least she's true to her convictions. Good on her. She's not a hypocrite.
Yes,
and it just shows you that you can grovel and crawl to pander to the climate cult, but it won't earn you any brownie points, as Vogue are now learning, Andrew.
Oh, well, Rowan, I wonder how many parties she gets invited to with a record like that. Rowan Dean, thank you so much indeed for your time.